All right, hello everybody, we're back. I wanted to make sure the video wasn't gonna be turned the whole time that we were doing it because that would be super annoying. So welcome. Tonight we're gonna be doing the Chunky Shapes tutorial. So if you ordered the leaves or the acorns or the pumpkins, we're gonna show you how to paint those. And if you did not order those and you would like to, there is a link in the description of this video that you can click on, and it'll take you to our website where you can see everything that we currently have. Some of the kits are on pre-order, the leaves and the acorns. We sold out of all that we ordered for those. So those are actually on pre-order right now, which means that if you order tonight, they won't be here for a couple weeks. But you're welcome to use the code FALL10, FALL10, and you should be able to save 10% on those since they're not arriving yet. I'm actually gonna see if I can pull myself in as a guest on the video. Let's see. I'm gonna see. I don't think it'll let me, but I was hoping you could see my face while I'm doing this. And also, if you are watching this on our website, we are gonna be doing this live, and then we're gonna be saving it to our website afterwards for those that order kits and want to work on this at a different time. So, nope, I don't think it's gonna let you see my face. That's okay. So, we're gonna go ahead and get into it. With your kit, you should have gotten, obviously, your shapes, whichever shapes you picked, multiple shapes if you ordered all of the sets. You should also have gotten some small jars of paint in some different colors. I'm gonna be using paint out of our squeeze bottles tonight. I believe both of these kits came with the fresh mustard, which is this kind of rich yellow color. So some different shades of colors. You should have some foam brushes that we're gonna be using for painting these. Some sandpaper to distress these a little, and then some wax to finish them at the end. And then the optional add-on for the pumpkins was doing a stencil. So you might have gotten some of these Mylar stencils. I'm gonna show you how to do that on this pumpkin that's already done, and they're gonna kind of turn out like these ones over here. These are actually ones that we have left over from last year. So those are kind of our samples for that. Again, if you did not get a kit and you'd like to order one, you can leave a comment down below or visit the link that's in the description for this video, and you'll be able to see what we have. I'm gonna keep the video pulled up from my laptop. That way if anybody has any questions as we're going, I can answer questions. I'm just not gonna use names since we're gonna be posting this to the website afterwards. I wanna keep some privacy for everybody. So I am not gonna do all 6 of these. I think I'm just gonna do one from each set. So 1 leaf, 1 acorn, and then this pumpkin's already painted, so all we'll have to do is stencil on there. This is actually, both of these, well, all 3 of these, are really easy projects. The hardest part with these is definitely the stencil on the pumpkins. That's gonna be the trickiest spot. But as far as just painting, these are really easy. The only thing with this one, with the acorn, is if you're gonna do the dark brown or some shade of brown for the top of the acorn, that can get a little bit tricky. And you should have a little like detail brush, a small brush that came with your kit that's good for those. And feel free to use any artist brushes that you have on hand too. Any brush will really work good for these. I think the foam brushes work the best for these shapes. Kind of puts the paint on nice and smooth, so it's a little bit easier to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of jump right into it. The first thing that you're gonna wanna do is a base coat on all of your shapes. So each kit came with kind of its own different colors, and you can pick and choose which colors you wanna use on those. I'm gonna be using Sparklers, which is like a reddish orange for my acorn. And I think I'm gonna do the fresh mustard for the leaf, do a yellow leaf. Always wanna make sure that you are shaking your paint up before you use it. The water will separate on the top, and that's good. That's actually protecting the paint underneath. So you just wanna make sure that you mix that up really good before you start using those. So, and it doesn't take very much at all, especially if you're gonna do each shape a different color. You just need a little bit. You can pour it out into a plate or in a little cup. You're just gonna put a little bit on your foam brush to start, and you're just gonna start sweeping that on. Now, the one thing to watch with this acorn is wherever you think you want the top of your shape to be, where that cap of the acorn is gonna be, we don't wanna put too much paint up there. So you can almost use like the edge of the foam brush, and you're just gonna kind of drag that over. And then we'll make that look a little bit nicer when we go in with the detail brush afterwards. Just kind of dragging that over. The thing that I love most about this paint is that it dries really fast. So probably by the time we are done painting that leaf, we'll be ready to flip this one over. I am gonna do each side of these. So you could do each side a different color if you want, or you can paint the same thing, the same shape, the whole color. Okay, so with the 2-ounce jars, there's not, some of them we did write the colors on, the other ones, there's not a spot for us to write the names on without writing on the actual bottle. So if it's a reddish orange, it's gonna be sparklers. And they should be in your kits divided up in plastic bags. So the yellow, all the yellows included with these kits are the fresh mustard. All the reds that came with the kits are Paint the Town. The oranges, there were a few different options for those. There was Pumpkin Spice, which is this one. You can see the difference between that and the sparklers. So the sparklers is more of that reddish orange. This is Paint the Town. And then dark roast is that really, really rich dark brown. The other color that came with the leaf kit was the Rustic Charm, which is a light green. So if you're into green as a fall color, you can use that. We tried to include some different shades. Yeah, normally on the 4-ounce bottles, there's like a line right on the front, or the front 4-ounce jars where we write the names. The 2-ounce jars are so tiny, sometimes it's hard to get them on there. So if you have a color and you're not sure what it is, just snap a picture real quick and put it in the comments for me, and I can take a look and let you know which shade it is. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the back side of this leaf with the same color as well. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do both sides, and then we're gonna do the edge all the way around too. Sometimes it's easier to do the edge with a detail brush because they're kind of rough. So with the foam brushes, you're mostly just like pressing it in there, and that can kind of tear up the foam. Just wanna go nice and careful. So like this side is pretty much almost dry already. That's how quickly these dry. Love that. All right, so again, this is fresh mustard. I'm gonna get all these edges in here. If you want a richer color, you can let this dry and do a second coat. If you're gonna really distress it and rough it up, sometimes it doesn't need a second coat. The other thing that people will do sometimes with these chunky shapes is stain them first. So if you've been to one of our normal wood sign classes, usually we'll stain all of our projects first, and you can definitely do that with these. If you want to spend a little extra time on them, it just gives it kind of more of a vintage look, and it helps these colors dry a little bit darker. So that's how quick we got that one. We got both sides covered on that one now. So I'm gonna let that sit for a minute while I finish this little acorn over here. He's dry on the top, so I can flip him over and do the second side. I'm gonna come in here and get the edge too, and you wanna make sure that you don't go all the way up, because we're gonna end up covering that brown for the cap. I'm gonna come around this side. All right, and then we're just using that straight edge to kind of sweep it across. So I probably will do a second coat on this color just because I want it to be nice and dark. And I want to bring out a little bit more of the red tones in it than the orange. I'm going to brush another coat on this side. Same thing, just kind of sweeping. And then we just need to make sure that a side is dry enough before we set it down. Brush this out as much as I can. If you're doing a lot of different shapes all together in one area, just kind of be careful. Like, I don't want to get any of my sparklers on my leaf. So if you're flicking paint, just be a little careful that it doesn't flick onto something else. All right, so that's the first step. You're gonna get all of your base coats on all of your shapes. I'm gonna let this dry for a minute before I go and do the cap. That way those colors don't bleed together. So base coats on every shape first, and then you'll decide if you want to do a second coat of your color to make it darker. So I'll do a second coat on this fresh mustard just on one side, just so you can kind of see the difference. So right now you can see more of the wood grain showing through. But if you want more of a solid color, you can brush it out like this. I'm not gonna do the edge again. If you've done, like if you did the stars with us in the summertime or the pineapples, what we did on those was we took a detail brush and kind of flecked paint on those to make them look a little bit more vintage. I'm gonna do that on these. But I don't need to do the edge because you're not really gonna see the edge once it's propped up and sitting on a shelf. All right. So easy peasy, just base coats on all of those. So you can do each one a different color. You can do the back a different color, your choice. Just be careful with your hands before you're touching your other shapes. I got mustard on one of those unfinished leaves, which is okay. All right, so if you have the pumpkins, gonna wipe my hands off real quick. If you have the pumpkins and you opted for the stencils, I'm gonna show how to do that next. If you did not, you can go ahead and keep on painting your other shapes. Once this live video is over, we'll post it to the page. So if it goes a little bit fast for you, that's okay. You'll be able to pull this back up and see all the different steps. We just want to make sure that it's not like an hour-long video for our friends that are watching afterwards on the website. So again, this is for anybody who got stencils with their pumpkins. I'm going to do the polka dot because that's the easiest stencil to use. There's also the buffalo check plaid, and then either stripes or chevrons. The stripes and the chevrons can be kind of tricky because it's flat, like lines that are trying to go across. This one's probably the hardest one out of all of them just because there's a lot of little indents. So the stencils usually look best if you do a lot of sanding and distressing afterwards to kind of take care of that. Like you can see on this one, we had a little bit of bleeding in there. But once it's up on the shelf, propped up, it's not super noticeable. So again, the polka dots are definitely the easiest one. So with these, you can either use a foam brush to brush the polka dots on, or you can use, like if your kids have some of these little artist brushes, they look kind of like stencil brushes, think they make them for just like regular kids paint. These are great for using with stencils. And usually the crustier the better, because you want something kind of stiff with these. So I'll use both on mine and you can kind of see the difference between those. After you're done putting your base coats on, you want to just kind of lightly sand it. That way it'll smooth out all the paint. This one got a little bumper scuff on him. He's been in a box since last fall. So just a light sanding, and then you're gonna use a rag or paper towel or anything really. If you have an old sock that doesn't have a mate, those work great for waxing and dusting off projects. Anything that'll get the dust off of there. All right, so we'll do this side, and then I am going to use, there's two different whites that we have. There's Simplicity, which is like a stark white, and then there's Crinoline, which has just a touch of warmth to it. So I'm gonna use Crinoline. That's my favorite color, my favorite neutral shade. And you're gonna grab your stencil and you're just gonna kind of line it up where you want it to go. So I'm looking at this one that we had from before. On this one, you can see that some of our polka dots are going off the edges. You just have to kind of decide if you want polka dots to be going up over the stem of the pumpkin. And I don't think that I want that. So I'm gonna kind of mimic what we had last year, maybe. We're gonna go with that. That looks good. So if you've done the succulent box project with us, you probably used one of these Mylar stencils. They're different than a normal vinyl stencil because they don't stick. So what you really have to make sure that you do is hold them down as you're stenciling on your project. That's why the stripes and the chevron are a little trickier, because they have a lot more pieces, where this one's kind of a flat piece just with things cut out. So if you're using one of the stiff brushes, it's just gonna be a little bit of paint on the end of the brush, and you can kind of dab some of that off somewhere on the stencil. And then you wanna kind of go dot by dot. So just tapping the paint on there really light. Okay, making sure that you're pressing down really good so that paint isn't going underneath the stencil. Paint will go underneath there, that's just kind of natural with these, but that's okay. Again, sanding is gonna kind of help take care of that. We just don't want a ton of paint to be going down underneath there. All right. So I'm gonna switch over to the foam brush. If you're using a foam brush, you can do kind of the same thing, just really, really light tapping. This one's gonna take a little bit more work just because the tip of the brush is a line instead of being more concentrated like the other brush. All right. So if you've done one of our normal projects, we always say not to stipple, not to press the brush, because it might bleed down underneath. But with these, we just want the paint to be going up and down over it. So very, very light. Making sure that your color is even on all of your dots too. So like this one looks pretty light compared to the other one. So I'm gonna try and take some of the paint off of this and maybe put a little bit more onto this one. So once you've gone over them, as long as they feel dry to the touch, if you want to do a light second coat, you can do that. I know, I love all the fall colors too. Super light. And then when you're ready, you're just gonna very gently lift it up. Looks pretty good. We just had a little bit on this side. I'm gonna try and pull some of that off. But once we sand it, that is gonna be no problem at all. That's gonna look great. And then the nice thing about these is you can wash them just like with a sponge and water, or wipe them off like with a baby wipe, and then you can use this over and over and over again. So you can use it on other projects, you can use it on your other shapes. That's the nice thing about those. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry for a bit, and I'm gonna switch back and put some paint on the top of my acorn. So there's two different ways that you can do this. You can brush your cap color on nice and solid. I'm gonna sit down for this step. Or you can put it on so that it looks kind of like a stain. That's gonna let some of the wood grain show through. And for that, you'll want just like a little bit of water, or you can even use like a wet paper towel or a baby wipe to kind of rub some of the color on there. So I'll do one on each side. So this side, I'll paint the color on just so you can see how dark this will be. So I'm using a small detail brush. Okay. Country Chic has a really great set of artist brushes that kind of come in all different sizes. Those are a nice thing to have on hand for projects like this, because you never know when you're gonna need a certain size brush. All right, and then now what I'm gonna do, where it meets that sparkler's color, I'm just gonna kind of drag my brush across there really carefully. And the best bet is if you overlap that reddish orange. That way you don't have to worry about the color being perfectly met up with it. Just go over that a little bit so it's kind of like a seamless transition in there. So I'm just turning, kind of following this arc all the way across here. There we go. My best advice for tough stuff like this is don't overthink it. Just go for it. If you need to bring that line down a little bit farther, you can. If you look at mine, it's not perfect. As close as I can get it. So that's what it looks like if you brush your paint on solid. So now I'm gonna do the edge. A little bit of a splinter from the wood on there. All right, so just nice and thin. These little brushes are better for getting in the little crevices in the wood. So again, this color is dark roast. If you're feeling like this is too dark, you can always mix a little bit of white into it, and you can even use a little bit like of a regular acrylic craft paint. The only difference between acrylic and this is that the chalk paint has, or the chalky finish paint has a flat finish, whereas most acrylics have some kind of a sheen to them, either satin, glossy, and those don't distress as good as a flat finish will. So if you're going for the vintage look and you're gonna sand it, woo, see I did that. You're gonna wanna go with something that's got more of a flat finish to it. Boom, look at that. I messed it up and rounded it out. All right, I need to be done with this side. Okay, so if you want more of the stained look, what you can do, I actually just have like a regular baby wipe. You can put just a small amount of paint on the wipe, and you're just gonna kind of rub it into the board like this. See how you can see some of the wood grain showing through? And that color is just a little bit lighter than what it was on the other side. I'm gonna go ahead and set this down. So if you like more of that kind of rustic look, you can always try staining it like this with a wet rag. And if you don't like it, you can brush back over the top of it. I'm gonna get just like a small little corner of this. And I'm just gonna kind of go back and forth across here. So this one isn't gonna be as clean of a transition just because we're using something different. There we go. So that's the difference between a brush and more of a stain. I like that. That's just a little bit lighter. Gives it more of that kind of rustic wood look. There we go. All right, so you can see the difference. So there's the stain, and there's that color on there by itself. So as you're brushing this on too, if you brush this on and you're feeling like this is a little too dark, you can always, while it's wet, mine's dry so it's not gonna do as much, but you can always take a rag and you can kind of pull some of this back off. Oh, it's taking a little bit. So again, I'm just using a baby wipe. Really any clean, damp rag will work for this. I got a little bit onto the sparklers, but I kind of like it. I think it looks nice. All right, hello to everybody watching. Thanks for joining us. I know this is gonna be posted afterwards, but for anybody live, I hope that your kiddos had a great first day back, if they started back today. If it was your first day of virtual, I hope it went great. All right. So that's kind of it as far as the main coats of paint go for these. So the next step is just kind of letting everything dry. If you want to be fancy and you think you're gonna brush some like details on here, like if you wanted to make it look like there was different colors brushed into it, you could do that. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna keep this pretty basic. For any beginners that are watching, we're gonna keep it pretty basic. But I am gonna show you how to sand these. So we're gonna sand them first, and then if you're thinking you wanna do kind of the flecking on them, I'll do that next. I'm probably only gonna do that on the leaf. So I have a plan for this one. I might do something else to that one. So there are some different types of sandpapers you can use. Most of the kits, we just include the fine grit because that's the easiest one to use. If you've painted with us before, you know there's always the option of you can use different types of sandpaper, like if you have sanding blocks at home or from other projects. This is a coarse grit. This is actually an 80 grit sandpaper. This takes off a lot of paint, and this is not usually one that beginners would choose to use. I am going to use this one on the pumpkins though, just because I want a really, really rough look. But you can be just fine with the fine grit one too. This works great for roughing things up. So for projects like this that are just a solid color, it's the same as when I sanded the pumpkin. You're just going to go nice and light. Do that on both sides. We're just smoothing it out. If you're wondering, why are we sanding this? We're just smoothing it out. Any bubbles or thick spots in the paint, we want to take care of that before we wax it. Same thing on the acorn. So all of your paint has to be dry before you sand it. So on your staining too, like if it still feels pretty damp, just give it a couple more minutes. You don't have to sand the edges of these. You can if you want to. Kind of tricky to get in there. Just the faces mostly. So just nice and light. We'll wipe these off in just a second. Okay, so that was the fine grit. If you have coarse grit or if you have something else at home that's a little rougher that you want to try, I'll show you what that looks like on here, and then you can kind of decide what you think. We're just going to go nice and light. All right, so you can see that's taken off a lot of the paint, especially over the polka dots. That's gonna really take off a lot of the white and go back down to the orange. So if you want a really, really vintage look, you can do a lot of sanding and that'll take care of that. All right, so see, it's not as noticeable. Like this one was he was kind of funky, but now he's not so noticeable because we sanded him quite a bit. All right, so now we're gonna take a paper towel and we're gonna get all the dust off of these. Get some dust off my area. Okay. So if you're thinking that you want to try doing some of the flecking, I'm going to show you how to do that next. We'll do that on the leaf. So you should have a small brush, like a little blue handled detail brush. Or, you know what actually works best for this too is like an old paintbrush. If you have an old toothbrush. If you have an old toothbrush, you can use that. I'm just gonna put, for anybody watching on Facebook, I know there was a question about colors. I'm gonna link to the color page on Country Chic. That way if you need to figure out a color, again, you can post a picture of a color in the comments. I'm happy to help you identify it too if your jar doesn't have a label. Most of them we wrote, let me see if I can find one. So if your colors are labeled, they'd be on the top right here, or we wrote a lot of them on the side, on the edge too. Or you can look at the bottom of it, and that'll kind of help compare it to the other ones that are in there. All right. Okay, so for the flecking, the goal with this is just little bits of paint to kind of give it that kind of speckled vintage look. So I've got the dark roast, and I've got just a little bit of paint on the ends of a paintbrush, and you're just gonna kind of flick the bristles like this. Flick, 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 flick. I'll use this one. There we go. It's gonna take a couple minutes if you want it really, really flecked. And your finger's gonna get a little bit dirty. All right, so we're just kind of covering. Yeah, make sure if you have other shapes that you're not flecking, that those are out of the way. Okay. So that's how it looks right now. So that's compared to how it was before to now. So you can do that with black, and you can do that with white, or sorry, the dark brown. I would use a different brush or wash your brush out in between. That way you don't end up with like an in-between color. So if you took your brown brush and went right into the white, you'd get like a medium shade of brown. So now this is white. So this is just gonna give it a little bit more definition. I'm not gonna do too much white. Keep a good distance above the shape too. You can see I was a little close on that one, and I got kind of a big chunk on there. This step takes the longest time to dry, just because some of those chunks, like that one, is pretty full. You have to make sure that it's totally dry. Here, I'm gonna scoot this down a little bit more. Totally dry before you put any wax on it. We don't want to wax over this too soon because it'll smear any wet paint that's on there. Okay, so after you're done flecking, you can let that dry for a little bit. I got fleck, collect paint everywhere, all over my bottles. And then after all of your shapes are dry, the last step will be to wax them. All right. So we're gonna put that guy off to the side for right now since he's still a little bit wet. We'll bring this pumpkin back out. I think he will be ready. So you can use the same rag that you used before for picking up dust. It's no worries. When you're waxing, the rag is gonna keep picking up the dust off of the shapes. What the wax is gonna do is it's gonna seal your color so that it does not fade over time. It also makes things heat and water resistant, but it's not gonna make it waterproof. So, I mean, these little shapes really aren't meant for going outside. You're welcome to put them outside if you'd like to, but anywhere inside your house, these are gonna be nice and protected. So all you're gonna do is start with a little chunk. A lot of people ask, you have to wax them? No, you don't have to, but you can see over here what a difference that makes in the color. It really brightens all those colors back up, especially if you did a lot of sanding with those. It's really gonna brighten everything back up. And then I would wax the edges too. So the goal is that the wax feels nice and smooth. We don't want it to feel sticky or greasy. So just kind of run your hand over it. It feels greasy if it's like when you put too much lotion on. You want to kind of work that in a little bit more. You can use a clean part of the rag for that. All right, so that one's good. We're gonna switch over here. Okay, so any of my friends that are like into glittery stuff, we did not include glitter in these kits, but if you're thinking that you might want to put a little glitter on some stuff, I can show you how to do that. Do not wax the areas where you're gonna put glitter. So I'm gonna try putting some just on the very top of this, just on this one side, not both sides. But you do not want to wax anywhere where you're gonna put, oh, got a little bit up there, where you're gonna put some glue or some glitter. So I'll show you how to do that next. I'm gonna be using the Country Chic glass glitter for the first time, actually. I haven't found a project that I was really thinking was deserving of it until now. I wanna see what this little acorn looks like with some glitter. All right, so that side's full wax. This side, just the bottom. I'll make sure that feels nice and smooth. Okay, so this is glass glitter. This is gold glass glitter. It's glass because it's thicker, little like particles. Can you see that? Like little particles of glitter in there. Almost looks like real flecked gold. So we're gonna see what happens. If you're not into messy stuff, then disregard. Again, these didn't come in the kits. This is just optional. I have a lot of people ask about glitter a lot of the time. So we're gonna try it. So you can use a crusty old brush. You can use a foam brush. I'm just using regular school glue. If you have Mod Podge, that works great. We're gonna do just the top, not the edge. And we're gonna kind of brush it on a little thick. Now you wanna use glue instead of like putting paint on and trying to get the glitter to dry in the paint, just because the paint is gonna soak into the wood, where the glue is gonna kind of sit right on the top. And that's gonna be perfect. You want a good amount on there so it'll catch this glitter. All right, here we go. See what happens. Oh yeah, that's where it's at. Woo! I like to use towels, or this is actually a piece of poster board, something underneath, so then you can fold it and you can catch all your glitter back up. Oh, I go down here. Okay. I'm gonna spread that around a little. Wow. Yes. That is it. You can always go back in and add some more onto. A little bit stuck right here just from the wax. I'm just brushing that off with a dry brush. Oh yeah. That's good stuff. We'll just tap it and get some more off there. We can always put a little bit more glue in areas where it didn't cover completely. Boop, boop. Fill that in a little bit. Brush all this off. And then I'm gonna let this guy sit. Sometimes people will do like a clear coat over the top. You can do like a clear spray to get it to stick. That way it's not loose and falling off forever. I like it. All right. So again, that's a glass glitter. We have that here in the shop. It comes in 3 different colors. There's a silver, a gold, and then I believe there's like a black, like a charcoal. So those are fun. All right, so I think our leaf is probably dry enough to sand and wax. I'm not gonna do too much sanding. Oops, see, that's what happens. I just wanna kind of tone these down a bit. There we go. So just be careful. Like that was my biggest chunk and he was still a little bit wet. A little bit of wax. Love this fresh mustard. I think this is my favorite fall color. See how it's picking up like a little bit of an orange cast to it now? Love that. I am gonna fleck the back of this. I'm not gonna wax it yet. Again, you just wanna make sure it feels nice and smooth. Don't want it to feel sticky or greasy. And then that's it. All right, so once everything's waxed, then they are ready to go. They're ready to sit on your shelf or your mantle, wherever you like to decorate for fall. If you have any questions, you can comment right on this video, send us a message. Again, if you have a color in your kit, and you're trying to identify it, just snap a picture of it real quick and we can help with that. We tried to keep them all separated in their own plastic bags, but if you ordered all the kits, there's a good chance that some of them kind of got mixed up. So again, the 4-ounce containers, those are gonna be labeled right on the front with the color. 2-ounce ones, those are just made for us to just quickly fill. So if you need help with a color, let us know. And thanks for watching. If you want to order one of these projects, just head to the link in the description. Anything that says pre-order, you can use fall 10 to save 10% on that. Right now, that's just the acorns and the leaves. We've got the pumpkins. These are in stock. I believe we have 7 sets of these. And then tomorrow night, we'll be doing the slotted pumpkins. And I think we have 7 sets of those too. So check those out and thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a great night.